What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. And Nick, we're talking about the offensive line, specifically McVay's recent comments on Coleman Shelton and Joe Noteboom, the Demarcus Robinson signing, the Sean Desai hire, making it 9 total coaches that Sean McVay has brought onto his staff for this season, and then the salary cap increase. But first, and most importantly, how are you, my good brother?
I'm good. I really dug right into that McVay interview. I felt like there are a lot of good nuggets in there that we can discuss here. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun Monday.
It's a good way to kick off the week. I think Sean McVay's comments in this most recent press conference were really, really telling, especially as it relates to the offensive line. We want to kick it off with Coleman Shelton because it feels like Coleman Shelton's potentially going to be re-signed. So Sean McVay made comments on Coleman Shelton specifically and Joe Noteboom, and this one was really, really straight and to the point. They've proactively been in talks with center Coleman Shelton and his representation to get something done. So we feel like it's any day that it's going to happen. And Sean McVay commented that we would really like to get him back. So the option of voiding him in his final year of his contract and becoming a free agent this spring is definitely an option. It's definitely in play for Coleman Shelton. But this deal seems like it's all but done, and you're able to keep as much continuity as humanly possible up front. And Nick, you might be able to run it back with the same starting 5. So in the draft, you can look to replace some of these interior positions, specifically at center. You can go find another Joe Noteboom type swing player. But this feels like a player that you want to be able to lock up, keep. Matthew Stafford has been pretty vocal about his progression. He's a left-handed center, so a little bit different. But as an undrafted player, these guys have made names for themselves. So it feels like Coleman Shelton is going to be here to stay. So I wanted to get your thoughts.
I think a lot of the cadence between Matthew and Coleman has been huge. It's something that they both talk about. So it's somebody that a lot of people would love to see staying around. It's all as far as the front 5. I'm not sure if that's going to be completely the same, right? Especially when you have McVay kind of rambling on Noteboom, like without even it being brought up.
Yeah. So, I mean, the offensive line is so important, right? The center position is increasingly more important. You said it in the last episode. These guys identify blitzes. They have cadences with the quarterback. They're just integral to being able to run your offense appropriately. And the comments on Joe Noteboom were a little bit telling, right? Because they were long. It just felt like McVay was continuously rambling. If you could lock up Joe Noteboom in that right guard position, you're going to have continuity across the starting 5. But your 6th player, potentially your swing tackling, a guy that has shown that he could play inside. These comments were rambles. I felt like this was really telling as to where Sean McVay is going to bring the direction of Joe Noteboom's contract. This is what he said. We're working through all of those things right now. I think it's so impressive what Joe did, the toughness that he showed last year, the ability to really play all 4 spots with the exception of center. We're really working through that. We'll see what it looks like as it relates to the status with us moving forward. But Joe's been a big-time contributor and certainly wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the good things without Joe and his ability to play right tackle, left tackle, and right guard. If he had played left guard, I'm sure he could. But unfortunately, we had a rookie and offensive lineman, Steve Avila, that came in and played 100% of the snaps. So real credit to Joe for what he's been able to do and more contributions he had last year, many contributions he had last year. That was a lot. Like that. Yeah. You saw how straightforward he was with Coleman Shelton, and the fact that quote was as long as it was, I feel like it's very, very telling in terms of how they're going to renegotiate the contract, whether they cut or trade him after post-June 1st designation. The money's a little bit different in terms of savings. If you do it before June 1st, it's only a $5 million savings and a $15 million cap hit. If you do it after, the numbers are reversed. So you have some optionality, but the writing's on the wall with Joe Noteboom.
It does feel like if they can bring him back cheap and use him more of like a Swiss Army type role, like, God forbid somebody does go down, then it does feel like he can swoop in pretty much any of the offensive line roles. So that would, but to me, it does sound like his days are numbered just based on that.
You could redo the contract, but for when you look at the salary cap and you see Aaron Donald and Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, and then you see Joe Noteboom as the 4th player, it gets a little bit shaky. But I think the direction and how they originally observed Joe Noteboom, like this is going to be the left tackle of our future. And if we sign him to this contract, it's a bit of a bargain, right? If he's able to stay on the team, he's less than a $20 million cap hit for 4 or 5 years. He's in the same ballpark as Rob Havenstein in terms of a starter. So that was their thought process. It's just the contract didn't work out the way that they would have liked. And now you're kind of dealing with the situation where you could eat some dead money and maybe get some quick savings immediately. But also, like, you could potentially keep the player as a swing tackle and a Swiss Army knife if you're not going to address it in the draft. So plenty of things that they could do. But I feel like his days are very numbered with the Rams.
Yeah, grateful for everything that he's done, but it does feel that way as well. Yeah.
And then, some good news now. Demarcus Robinson signed a 1-year, $5 million deal. He's back for a year. So then after this year, you're going to see Tutu and Demarcus Robinson as free agents. But I think for the time being, to be able to lock somebody up for a $5 million deal, it immediately fills the void that Brian Allen left in terms of a $5 million savings. So they used that money and gave it right to Demarcus. He was just unbelievable down the stretch. And I feel like it was a really, really smart signing for the Rams just to be able to bring him back in the building and give him a full offseason with the entire wide receiver staff and personnel to be able to just kind of build upon what they were able to instill in the last 5-6 games of the season.
Yeah, the more I think about this Demarcus Robinson signing, it kind of reminds me of the Allen Robinson one from this is kind of what we thought Allen Robinson was going to be. And then to kind of find him or find that role in Demarcus Robinson. And I mean, down the stretch, the guy was lights out. I think it was like 7 touchdowns in the last 7 games or something like that.
Yeah, no, he was. So his last 5 games of the 2023 season, 34 total targets. So 7 targets per game, 21 total receptions, 64 yards per game, and 4 touchdowns. I think he had 7 on the season. So just really, really tough. And to be able to get on the same page as Matthew Stafford down the stretch is important. But like in terms of your comparison to Allen Robinson, probably on our part, we didn't study him enough before he came into the building. We were like, is he going to be a Robert Woods replacement? Is he going to be like, an X receiver on the outside with Van Jefferson, a field stretcher? But we know what Demarcus Robinson is. We know he's a true X receiver, a field stretcher, and a guy that has developed as a run blocker, has really kind of picked up on the Rams' system and has progressed throughout the season. So I think they just wanted to keep that continuity and have a full offseason to be able to kind of develop it again.
Yeah, I mean, also it kind of tells me that what they're going to be doing with the draft might change a little bit with bringing him back. And it's like, okay, we understand who our core receivers are. With Demarcus Robinson, you're coming back for this year. We think we can do it this year. Like it's a 1-year deal. Let's it's a lot of money. Like, let's go out there and win it. So hopefully what they address in the draft is less so what they just signed right now, and hopefully it's more of like a defensive draft. But I love Demarcus Robinson. I thought he was fantastic last year, so I'm really excited to see him come back.
No, but your point's heard, right? Because instead of looking at the 19th overall pick at a Jackson Powers Johnson type center, you could lock up Coleman Shelton and bring in the continuity. Same thing with Demarcus Robinson, right? Instead of going Xavier Legette in the 2nd round to replace an X receiver, you lock up Demarcus Robinson for a year and $5 million. And you just got, like I said, you saved the money with Brian Allen. So you're not really taking any money out of your pocket to pay DeMarcus. It's a perfect situation for everybody. Super happy that he's back in the building. So it's going to be just, more good things as the Rams' offense continues to build upon what they brought to the table since the bye week of last year.
I totally understand draft the best guy on the board, but let's bring in let's fill our holes, really.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it over the weekend. I was like, do you want to bring in like a Puka Cooper Kupp type receiver that's as versatile as those two, could play all 3 receiver positions, and then you kind of have a 3-headed attack with that type of receiver where they're interchangeable and matchup nightmares? Or do you want to kind of go towards the X mold and then you bring back Demarcus Robinson, but you can kind of look towards later rounds in the draft to be able to kind of continue to build upon that X receiver position with the thought process of Tutu and Demarcus not being in the building next year under contract. So a lot of them, you can go either way, but like, how do you not like gravitate towards the Puka Nacua Cooper Kupp mold in the 4th, 5th round if you have that draft pick and that type of players available? So
it's a little difficult because with Demarcus, Cooper, and Puka, are on the field. I don't think any of them are like true, long, deep threats, really. So they don't really stretch the field 100%. which is, I think, what Tutu's really good at because he can just,
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. Like, that was their best three, though. When those three were out, that's who you wanted to see. I guess you could argue that Cooper Kupp is able to do that just because of the attention that he gets, but Puka Nacua might also next year, depending on how they decide to cover him.
Yeah, I was watching the
uh,
Super Bowl back, and I just remember when Cooper Kupp had to line up on the outside one-on-one with double coverage, and everybody knew the ball was going to him. But that's like the type of receiver that Cooper Kupp is, and same with Puka Nacua. But yeah, you're right. A true field stretcher is Tutu Atwell or Brandon Cooks, those type of players. So well, that's going to continue to progress. We'll stay on top of it in terms of the receiver news because we know Sean McVay loves his receivers.
I'm sure they'll get one.
Yeah, I do too. So the next piece of news is Sean Desai. So we thought that the coaching staff was locked up. They had brought in 8 new faces, but I thought that the Sean Desai hire was really, really interesting just because of the way that it was described. So a multifaceted role that will work with the offense and the offensive coaches from a defensive perspective. That make sense?
So this happened after the Sean McVay interview. It
did.
So he didn't really get to discuss it, but he kind of almost touched on it a little bit because at the end of the interview, he's talking about how, like, oh, if I could go back, maybe and do it all over again, I think I'd be a defensive coach. Like, these defensive coaches have to be able to challenge the offense and they have to be able to understand the offense, and that's what Chris Shula brings. And saying all this stuff about how these defensive-minded coaches also are offensive geniuses, and it kind of lines up with like this role being fulfilled. But Sean Desai, I mean, that's somebody I wasn't expecting to bring in the building at all, to be honest.
I agree. Like, they've been quietly staffing this job over the last couple of years, so it's not a surprise that it kind of fell by the wayside, but it's reminiscent of the Jimmy Lake hire from last year, the guy that Raheem Morris brought with him to Atlanta. But I think it's worth noting with the Eagles defense, the way that Matt Patricia took it over and defensive play calling duties around week 13 or 14 for the Eagles, and the Eagles talk radio went absolutely ballistic. They were substantially worse over that small sample size. And the favorite to win the Defensive Player of the Year, Jalen Carter, was almost a non-factor and ended up getting beaten out by Houston's Will Anderson Jr. in the final weeks of the season for that rookie Defensive Player of the Year. So Sean Desai has been a defensive play caller on 2 separate occasions with the Bears in 2021, where the Bears were 4th in sacks behind the Rams, who were 3rd, and only allowed 191 passing yards per game, which was 3rd best in the league. So I don't remember him specifically being effective during the first game of the season when Van Jefferson was taking the top off of the defense and Matthew Stafford's coming out party in the first week of the season in 2021. But his stint with the Eagles, even though it wasn't as successful, it's worth noting that his background and his coaching positions on both sides of the ball, you could see it with his resume, as well as being an assistant to Pete Carroll in 2022 before he got to Philadelphia. So some really strong NFC familiarity that you're bringing into the building, alongside of the fact that it's going to help Chris Shula continuously develop into an elite defensive coordinator.
I also think the Eagles' demise last year feels like there was a lot going on in that building that kind of brought everything tumbling down. Like, even when they were winning in the beginning, it never really felt legitimate because it was always like by the hair of their chin. So I mean, when you go to a Super Bowl, it's so difficult to get back the following year. Like, it's almost impossible after you lose to go back immediately. It like never happens, and maybe we can just throw that year out. But I mean, just from somebody that watched a lot of the Eagles, and then to bring somebody in from that coaching staff, it is a little alarming.
Sure.
Especially because it seems like everybody else that they brought in, like, is all exciting, up and coming. But at the same time, I'm in full trust in who McVay and Snead hire and bring in. So
yeah,
I think
and that's the recency bias that's talking too, right? Because I felt the same way. Like, when you look at his career trajectory, he was on his way up. Safeties coach, defensive coordinator, associate head coach, and defensive assistant, defense. Like, he was on his way up as he went to Philadelphia. It just didn't work out. So
yeah.
replaced him with Vic Fangio. And it's good. You want to bring more minds into the building. It felt like a lot of the staff hires were catered towards the offense. It seems like a lot in the building just holistically is catered towards the offense and Sean McVay. Because when you look at the next topic we want to talk about was the salary cap and the salary cap increases. But when you look at the way that this is broken out, the Rams' total salary cap that's being used right now, the offense is accounted for 155 million total. The defense, 55 million total. So $100 million less allocated to the defense. And then special teams, just $2 million. Benny Sco, he's happy with the money that's in his pocket. He's smiling. But when you look at the way this is all broken down, it's very synonymous with the performance of last year and why Raheem Morris got a head coaching job and the lack of money that they allocated towards the defense for 2023, just to be able to, claim in the offseason that the offense was going to be able to carry the heavy load. And when you see the way that the salary cap's being broken out now, so the salary cap increased $30 million to $255.4 million total. So now there's some more legitimate money on the table. How it directly impacts the Rams, it's good for all teams. But I think for teams that have some really, really tough decisions to make, some undrafted players that they want to potentially re-sign, some unrestricted free agents, it creates more opportunity. And I think that the way that all salaries are going, right? You look at a Patrick Mahomes or a Matthew Stafford or an Aaron Donald, like we want to continuously pay these players more money because the product on the field is so damn good, and all the ad revenue from all these streaming services continuously increases the money that these teams in the league are bringing in. So the way that it's working right now, it gives you more opportunity. And I think that it's definitely worth discussing because of the way that the Rams kind of evaluate unrestricted free agents, right? Because like we were talking about the edge position, we were talking about the cornerback position. I still feel like that those are the two priorities in the offseason, right? Because you allocate, I mean, you could pay an edge rusher $25 million this season. You could look at a Josh Allen or a Brian Burns or a Danielle Hunter. The cornerbacks aren't as talented, but I still feel like you're going to have to do something splashy on defense this season. It's going to be one of those two positions.
If you bring in like a top quality edge rusher, don't you think that like your cornerback can kind of not be as top quality? Like if you get to the quarterback much faster, like the cornerback's job is not going to be as difficult. So, I mean, that's like, thinking like a kid in the backyard, but still.
No, it's the perfect thought process. If your pass rush wins, it's less pressure on your secondary to hold coverage. Yeah. It makes sense. If your pass rush wins in 2 seconds, that's only 2 seconds that your secondary has to cover for it.
Two Mississippis. Get in there. That's all you need.
So in terms of who's out there, so I just kind of wanted to break down some of the top edge rushers that are available as unrestricted free agents and cornerbacks. Like the top two cornerbacks in Jalen Johnson and L'Jarius Sneed, probably not in the Rams' ballpark, but you could look a little bit lower down on that list for a Stephon Gilmore and Xavier Howard. Not interested in either of those players, but kind of where the thought is, if you want to bring in a little bit older of a veteran, because you had that veteran presence on the back end with Jordan Fuller and John Johnson this past season, you don't really have that going into this season. So I would like a little bit of veteran secondary help. Doesn't have to be any of these players, but just wanted to give you guys an example.
I know not cornerbacks, but back in the day, the Marcus Peters and the Eric Weddles of the Rams organization. Like I feel like a good Keith Talib. Oh yeah, God, I forgot about that. Was that was like my favorite defense, that Wade Phillip 2018. That was so fun.
I mean, how could you not love it? You had two really, really talented cornerbacks, and the pass rush was consistently winning. Right? You had young talent coming around the edge, Ebukam and Obo. It's just, it's a lot of fun. Clay Matthews, I think the season after. So
let's not go down that rabbit hole.
I'm pretty high on a player like Danielle Hunter, right? Like guys on this edge list are real. I mean, Josh Allen, Brian Burns, you could be obviously high on, but may get offered the franchise tag, may get locked up with their current teams in Jacksonville and Carolina. Danielle Hunter is a guy who seems like the Rams have been interested for a long period of time. With Minnesota, has the familiarity with Kevin O'Connell. That could be an acquisition that is a little bit lower of a tier than Josh Allen and Brian Burns. So maybe a $5 million savings in comparison per year, which would open up the door to be able to bring in a secondary veteran. something along those lines. So you could look at it as I could bring in 2 players for the price of 1 if you go a little bit lower on this edge list, or you can go after one of the top talents. And I wouldn't have a problem with the Rams doing either one, because it's definitely time for them to start investing in their defense. And I feel like one of the players, one of the top talents, edge or cornerback, deserve the kind of attention for less need to go out and seek and bring in. Whether it's a guy that he feels like is on their back 9 or a guy that's coming out of their first rookie deal who the Rams can lock up for a long period of time.
Yeah. Brian Burns, what I saw he was asking for may be too much for the Rams to offer. So I know he may be the one that everybody's kind of, thinking about right now. I don't think that's realistic.
You can't give Aaron Donald money and then pay Brian Burns Nick Bosa money, right?
Yeah.
Like, because Nick Bosa is making $34 million a year. He's the highest paid defensive player in the league. Like, Aaron Donald's right below that. So you theoretically can't do it. So
I feel like what's most realistic, because it's a pattern that the Rams, since McVay and Snead have been together, is they bring back people that they trust. So I think Leonard Floyd is probably the most realistic in that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it takes a team-friendly 1-year deal.
Yeah,
because then it allows you to bolster up the secondary as well. But like, to your point, you could just go out and get a top guy, and then you don't have to worry about the secondary as much. So again, optionality.
That's kind of what I want. I think a lot of what Raheem was working with last year was like finding like creative ways to like bring in pressure and trusting Aaron Donald and the other guys up front to be able to, win their matchups. But, without real edge help, it's really difficult to get home to the quarterback. And I think there was a stat recently that was like, or at least it was back in the day, where like a sack is actually more beneficial than like a turnover sometimes, because of just how much it kind of takes away from the momentum. So I really just want to see them hit the quarterback more. I felt like that was the main thing that was missing. So
the good thing
edge over quarterback is where I stand. Team Nick.
The scheme allowed them to generate pressure, and I think that was some of the good things that Raheem brought to the table. But they weren't always getting home. So you need that 1 or 2 players, that extra burst that'll allow for them to get home. So that's going to be so much fun about this time of year. It's like you're projecting, you're looking at so many potential options. And if the free agency, the way it doesn't shake out the way that you're looking, if you don't go edge, you don't go cornerback, you could always go safety. You could always go veteran tight end, because Hunter Long and Tyler Higbee are both starting the year coming off major injuries, and Bryson Hopkins might not be re-signed. So that could be perhaps some options you address in the draft. But I feel like it's just like edge and cornerback. You're coming off of a Jalen Ramsey contract. You're coming off of a Von Miller and Leonard Floyd contract. We know the way that they like to prioritize this position and for these 2 positions in free agency. And I feel like it's just a matter of time until the news starts to trickle out that they're investigating a certain player and they want to bring somebody into the building.
So, quick question for you, Dean.
Mm-hmm.
How much of the salary cap increase can we put onto Taylor Swift?
What do you mean? None.
So
how much? I see what you're saying. How much
revenue did Taylor Swift bring into the NFL in order for them to increase the salary cap? I think that's one of the reasons why the salary cap was increased.
It's definitely part of it. The other part of it is the Peacock deal, right? The Peacock playoff game that just raked in tons and tons of revenue. It's the Amazon Thursday night football games that continue to rake in more revenue. It's the other streaming services like the Apple TVs, the Netflixes, the Disney Pluses of the world that are looking for other partnerships that are continuously increasing the bids every single year. And then there's like the Toy Story stuff, right? And the Nickelodeon stuff. Like,
the Toy Story thing was so weird.
I know. But you think about how like in Andy's room, how every major network is trying to get a piece of the pie with the NFL, Nickelodeon, and Patrick and SpongeBob. Like, the revenue just continuously pours in. All of that, alongside of Taylor Swift being as unbelievable as she is the reason why revenue continuously increases for the NFL.
No, I just thought it was a funny question. I mean, I think like Travis Kelce jerseys went up by like 800%. Like, so, I mean, she definitely helped bring in, and it brought a whole new audience to the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl, I think, think I saw that this was factual. The most watched television program of all time this year.
Had like 123 million viewers
Yeah.
all at once. It was like the Super Bowl and the moon landing.
Yeah.
The two top events.
Wow.
It's great. That's why we love football. That's why we talk about it all year long. There's no off season. All of this stuff continuously ramps up. A lot of stuff is going to come down the pipe. The combine's coming up later this week. Thursday, we're going to get live combine drills. The Rams are going to start hitting the free agent market hard. They're going to start hitting the draft approach really hard. And then we're going to be rolling out the big board and all the other fun stuff that comes along with draft season. So if you guys are enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying what we're rolling out, make sure that you ram it. Like and subscribe.
Yeah,
we love
Dean
you
and I
guys.
are going to be doing a live combine 225 bench off. So don't miss that.
I'm down 225 for reps.
Yeah.
Let's see what you got.
Yeah. I mean,
You might have me by 1 or 2, actually. I think the last time we went, you repped like 12 or 13. I was like, all right.
I think I beat you, but I mean, if you're ripping 315 right now, there's no shot.
I'm ripping 315 for 2 right now.
Jeez. Working on that dad bod, huh?
Well, yeah, the food goes up, the bench goes up, everything's good.
The belly goes up.
The white in the beard, it all continuously.
Yeah, hit me where it hurts. All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
We love you. Go Rams. Talk soon. Peace.